MenScape, the podcast with Carl.J. Ashley.
Good evening, everybody, from Tipperary, wherever in the world you may be. The second edition of MenScape, the podcast, is brought to you by Stoneaholic Rock Shop. And if you have an opportunity to either buy some crystals or even shungite Merkabahs, then feel free to get in touch with D on 083 181 3948 or go to Stoneaholic Rock Shop on Facebook or www.stoneaholic.com. Without further ado, to this evening's guest. How are you, Richard?
I'm doing great, Carl. Thank you.
The one and only Mr. Richard Rocker. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay. I'm living in Ireland. I've been in Ireland for the last 18 years, coming from Canada.
What part of Canada, Richard?
Sorry?
What part of Canada?
Ontario, so specifically the Toronto area. So I grew up an hour outside of Toronto in a twin city, Kitchener-Waterloo. And then eventually I progressed to Toronto College, University, all that stuff, and lived there for 13 years. And then came over to Ireland here, which was only supposed to be for a couple months' time, but it seems 18 years later, I'm still here. So for some reason, I'm here. I kind of follow my guts, and that tends to lead me always to the right areas. So I've set up a clinic here. So for those that don't know, I have a natural health clinic, the Functional Naturopathic Clinic in Ennis, County Clare. We're a multifaceted clinic, kind of specializing more in functional and integrative medicine. So we deal with all the natural type therapies, massage, shiatsu, acupuncture. We have physiotherapists here, podiatry, counseling, psychotherapy, nutrition. I specialize in blood chemistry work. So we do take people's bloods and do fully comprehensive blood testing, which might be above and beyond what you would normally get from your GP. So for somebody that's looking more, wants a really big picture of what's going on with their health, then I would set up a blood profile, and we would look at that and make healthcare recommendations based on changing dietary habits, lifestyle adjustments to bring about balance. Yeah.
So I take it that makes you a very busy man.
Yeah, I am.
Are they queuing up round the block? Are they knocking your door down?
Definitely quite busy. Yes.
Yeah. I would count amongst myself as one of the people that would recommend you and your clinic to others. I've been an advocate for the alkaline water for at least, well, I was thinking about this. I can't put a date on it, but I'd say easily 5+ years ago. And when I read about the benefits of alkaline water, it seemed like a no-brainer to me personally. But then we've digressed into other areas and other things. And, when I saw your business card, it was like an amazing list of things. It was more like, what does this guy not do? Right.
Yeah, well, I figured out early on in my career, if you want to call it that, that it wasn't just one thing that people needed to gain balance in health. It was a combination of things. So therefore, that's why I eventually got involved in all the different facets of health and medicine. And I continue.
And herein maybe lies the issue with so-called modern medicine, in that you've got specialists for all these different areas. So if you've got a lung or a heart or an issue with a particular body part, there's no holistic view on that. It's just speak to a specialist in that particular region or with that particular thing. And anyone that will tell you about sort of posture, you could have a problem with your neck that's caused by your hip, or a problem with your hip that's caused by your toe, and vice versa.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it seems to be getting that seems to be getting more and more now, where you just have these specialty areas. Even that bloods is one of the specialties that I deal with. I hear a lot of people, they want to, let's say, for instance, get their B12 level checked, and some GPs aren't even checking that. Now you have to go see a specialist, and I just think that's weird. I'm going, well, why would I want to pay a specialist 100 to 200 euros to get a 10 euro test? Why can't I pay you 10 euros to get this test done? You know. But this is medicine, and now, of course, medicine has its place into things, and you know, Western medicine. If you're in an emergency and you need to save your life really quickly, or you've broken your leg and you need treatment, well, hey, Western medicine is what you want. It's going to do that. But for long-term maintenance of health, I don't really see it that way. You know, especially when I'm seeing a lot of people coming from, you know, your modern day medicine, and they're not getting the results because nobody's talking to them about their lifestyle and their diet. And then I always get very suspicious when a client comes in and I say, well, what did your doctor say about diet and food? Oh, they say that has absolutely nothing to do with anything. Then I start getting very suspicious, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it's time that you get yourself a new doctor, because anybody who says that, there's some issues there. Obviously, we know.
Was du isst, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
You are what you eat.
I mean, and when I work with somebody, I'm the opposite. If you're not willing to change your diet, I'm not going to work with you, because I know I'm not going to get results. Simple as that. And I hear a lot of people, you know, how's your diet? Oh, my diet is great. And I'm, okay, do a diary for me or list it out. And they do it. And then I'm going, well, that's not great. And it's just like you've burst somebody's bubble, and they're like, there's you know, they almost get offended, and then you go through it. But then you have to explain to them why it's not right. And that's not being done these days in medicine. Nobody is taking the time to sit down with the patient and explain, well, how does the body work? How do these things affect the body? And are we doing the right test to confirm that fact? So that's why I like doing blood tests with people, and fairly comprehensive blood tests, because if I'm only doing a blood test that is showing 20% of the pieces of the puzzle, I don't know what the picture is. You know, I want to see what the whole puzzle is, and then I can safely say, well, this is what you need to do. This is where you need to gear your diet towards. And this is a result of A, B, and C. Here it is in the test. We can't argue with that, you know. And even with people with so-called specialized diets, you know, and I'm not trying to poke at anybody that follows a special diet, but there are certain diets that I see. You don't even have to tell me. I can see the bloods, and I'm going, well, there are massive deficiencies here. Obviously, this person is not eating certain classes of foods, and therefore there's a deficiency, you know?
So would you also sort of bring it to people's attention that there seems to be a deficiency in education about nutrition and health and well-being? If you even just take something like reflexology, which I came across maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And it's not some new faddy thing. There's like 3,000 years of ancient teachings about certain aspects of holistic and nutrition and well-being. But we're taught that these things are now regarded as alternative, and that big pharma medicine is traditional. Whereas you've got all these ancient things that are actually traditional that are now regarded as quackery or alternative. So there's almost been a subversion of reality or the truth in the education system regarding holistic therapies. So they're seen as kind of fringe or minority, kind of sideline things. And the main body of things is, give them a pill for that, or give them a treatment for that. Surely modern medicine is alternative and not traditional.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I always like how they term natural medicine as the alternative when it's the original medicine. And we shouldn't really need medications. If we're living our life properly, we shouldn't need to have those medications. But it seems that medicine these days, especially Western medicine, has become a big business. And
For sure, yeah.
and healthy patients do not bring in money. So you don't want to kill people, but you don't want to make them better either. So you keep people half sick. So you keep coming in with your symptoms, and well, here comes the pen and paper, and you get your prescription for some medications, which is only really treating the symptom and not really looking at the root cause. Now, sometimes, of course, we do need symptom relief if we're in discomfort,
Yeah, of
but
course.
are we getting that? And are we at the same time looking, well, how did this problem occur in the first place? And what do we need to do to resolve that? And there isn't a medication that makes people healthy. You know,
So it's
arguably,
crazy, right?
maybe some kind of antibiotic, if you have an infection, will take you
Yeah.
to a certain point. But that's just getting rid of an infection. That's not making you healthy, so to say.
So if you're then going in and getting a prescription for something, and that is meant to ameliorate the symptoms, not make you better, just alleviate you from pain or suffering.
Yeah.
And then you've got to compound that, if the side effects of that, like, oh, this can affect the lining of your stomach, so we're going to need to prescribe you something else to help the wall of your stomach from, not suffering from. So right, so hang on a minute. So you've got something for this, and then something for the side effects from this. Where does that end? That's just
Well,
going to go on forever, right?
it does. And then I have patients that come in and I ask them if they're on any medications, and then I get the scroll coming out with a long list. And it wouldn't be unusual to see people these days that are on anywhere from 8 to 15 different types of medication. And then
And that's
and
an
then
average.
you're looking at that, and then you're going, well, how's the person's liver? And then you do a proper liver panel, you're going, well, it's not handling it very well. And then you have some people that are on so much medication that they're even doubling up on things. I had a son brought his father in because he suspected something wasn't right. He was on 13 medications, and he asked me, can you look at them and see if it's necessary? And I said, well, first of all, I'm not your medical doctor. I can't tell you to come off of them, but I said, I can definitely give you a little bit of information. And I was looking at his medications, and I said, do you realize that 4 of these medications are for the exact same thing, just different names? And then there was another one that was doubling or tripling up on it as well. So he went into his father's doctor because the father wouldn't go in, because a lot of the elderly generation, they deem their primary physician as almost demigod status, and we can't disagree with the doctor because what they say is right. And so he went in there and raised holy hell. And all of a sudden, I think the doctor got scared. And magically, he went down from 13 medications down to 6, just like that. So we have to look at these things and make sure that we're on the right track. Medication should always be short term. It's there to fix a little imbalance, but what are we doing to get to the root cause? And it always comes down to nutrition and lifestyle factors, always.
So the basics are, get outside if you can, walk, get some fresh air, eat well, eat a balanced diet. Would you include meat along with fruit and veg, nuts, grains? Like I suppose was lucky to have some experience of seeing the effects from a particular kind of diet that revolutionized my thinking about nutrition through yourself with the paleo and my tummy and having to look after that. And I've seen very strong arguments for vegetarianism and veganism, and I've seen very strong arguments that humans evolved with a need for animal products. Now, whichever way you want to go with that, I don't really want to get into the ins and outs of that here with you now, unless you want to go there. But surely it's about balance and having a balanced nutrition and a balanced approach to lifestyle, right?
It definitely is about balance. Now, I'm not going to get into ripping various diets apart in that. However, what I can tell you is from my experience, and I think because I'm doing conducting a lot of blood tests, and I see the results with that. The most deficiencies that I see with bloods comes from a vegan diet. And no offense to anybody that has a vegan diet. And one of our good friends, I know he follows a vegan diet. So I'm not trying to get into an argument or
Vegan
anything.
Ironman bodybuilders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing from the tests, and that's the only point I'm going to talk about now, is that I see the most deficiencies in those areas because there are certain classes of foods that aren't being met. So we see high inflammation levels, we see muscle atrophy, we see deficiencies of certain key nutrients, vitamins, and minerals, which are derived from animal-based proteins. And I think that's where the controversy is these days. Well, do we eat proteins? Do we not? Can we get it from vegetarian proteins, or do we need the animal-based proteins in there? And in my experience in working with people, when people are changed to more of a paleo type diet, I always see improvements. Not maybe I see improvements, I always see improvements.
Invariably.
And I see it in the blood work after that those deficiencies have been rectified. Inflammation levels go down. People start losing all the excess weight and so forth and so on. I think, unfortunately, these days, a lot of vegan and vegetarian diets, ironically, a lot of them don't even eat a lot of vegetables. They become carboholics. And I think that's where the issue is looking at, well, are the foods that you're consuming, are they high glycemic? Nobody does well with high amounts of glycemic foods in the diet. It's inflammatory. Your red blood cells do not function properly with them. There's too much inflammation. There's too much stickiness in the bloods where things start clumping and sticking together. So we're often told, oh, you eat an egg or red meat, the cholesterol is going to kill you. That's a load of nonsense. Because anybody that knows science and looks at how hormones are formed in your body, you need to have cholesterols, you need to have LDLs, which ironically we're told are bad fats. If you don't have those, you can't form proper hormones in your body. It doesn't work. But what does affect things is when you have too many carbohydrates, too many high glycemic foods mixed with bad fats. So we need to distinguish what are good fats and what are bad fats, and then make those changes. So, if you have a vegetarian diet, I still think you can do it. If you eat loads of good grass-fed butter and lots of good farm fresh eggs and things like that, I think you can do it. Unfortunately, I don't think you can do it with a vegan diet. Generally, the people that I've seen that with that, somewhere down the road, they end up having big deficiencies. And ironically, they all go back to eating meat and they start feeling better. In my experience.
Well, that's huge, but I'm gonna step in defense of the people that would say to me, but surely, Carl, it's wrong to absorb the energy, or not that it's wrong, but it can't be of a contribution to you spiritually if you absorb the energy from an animal that's been reared for slaughter, injected with artificial growth hormones, and then suffered before it's been killed. What energy are you absorbing then from that being? When you look at factory farming methods and the morality behind it, I think the vegans and the vegetarians have a pretty solid argument,
Yeah, and I would agree that the rearing of animals and farming practices could be a lot better. Of course, if your meat is being injected with all kinds of steroids and hormones and stuff like that, it will have some effect on you. However, I think depending where you live, that can be better or worse. I think here in Ireland, we're a little bit more fortunate that it's not like the US where everything is totally pumped up. And a lot of people, they tend to get their info from the US and then they just apply that to everywhere else in the world. In Ireland here, we have great grass-fed meats. Not that they don't use antibiotics and stuff. Yeah, it is. But you need to look where you get your food. Just like when you're getting your fruits and vegetables, people are looking for organic, so the less amount of sprayed herbicides and pesticides and so forth and so on. I do the same with my meat. There are certain people that I get my meat from that I know that they don't use those things. I have friends that are hunters, and they just don't kill for the sake of killing. They do it because they're trying to feed themselves and they want good, wholesome meats. That's what I would look at when getting my meats. As to not being spiritual, this comes up quite a lot, and I don't buy into that. When we look at the native Indians in North America and so forth, you can't tell me that they're not spiritual beings, and they ate a lot of meat. But they had respect.
They lived in harmony with the environment, didn't they?
They had respect for it before and after, and I think that's the difference with things.
And the different species of indigenous peoples, whether it's the Cherokee or the Cree, there's a vast number of them. Some live by the river, some live by the sea, some live near the forest, some lived on the plains, some lived in the mountains.
Yeah.
They all lived in harmony with the environment that they were in. And a buffalo kill could literally mean life or death for the people in the community. And they would use every last bit of the resource from that animal as a gift and have, I suppose, offerings, gratitude, and come at it from a spiritual angle. So yeah, interesting comeback. Yeah. So health is inextricably linked with nutrition. You are what you eat. And if, I suppose, a rule of thumb might be for anyone watching, if something comes in a packet or a box, it's more than likely had something done to it that's not going to read well when you look down the list of ingredients. And some very, very simple foods that you might think have little to no ingredients, the list goes on forever, and I'm putting it back on the shelf and thinking, well, I did like the look of that, but do you know something? No, and so it might make sense as a rule of thumb just to go by meat, fruit, veg, nuts. What about grains and oats? Like we all grew up on, a cup of tea and toast in the morning, and all of a sudden you've got cow's milk in the tea and sliced white bread with zero nutritional value, and all of a sudden we're rethinking, well, the loaf of bread and the pint of milk, we've all been reared on this, and we were okay. So
but grains weren't always the mainstay of the diet. Grains are relatively new in our known history of mankind. I mean, most people, they used to eat meats and heavy proteins and fats for breakfast, and again, you have to look at the glycemic load of these type of foods. I mean, we run on either glucose or we can run on very fats. Glucose is a very fast burning fuel, but it's not a clean fuel either. So you get this big spike up, and then you get the come down. And what happens? People have their tea and toast, or they have their bowl of whatever grains, whether it's oats or cereal or whatever. You're hungry an hour later, right? Because your blood sugar spiked up, and then it comes crashing down. And then inevitably, what do people do? I'm hungry. I need a boost. So they go grab their cup of caffeine, whatever it is, coffee or a black tea, or some people are even drinking sodas. And when you have your coffee and tea, well, I got to have a sweet treat with that as well. So now you gotten caffeine and you're getting sugar in there, and you're going to be boosted up and hyper for another hour, and then you come crashing down. And every time you come crashing down, it just goes down that little bit further, stressing out your adrenal glands, causing more dysfunctions until that little bit further goes 6 feet down, and then you're not getting out of that hole anymore. And this is what I see a lot in the clinical environment now. People, they have massive adrenal dysfunctions because they keep putting stimulants in. We're stressed out all the time. We got all kinds of stresses, and then we're fast foods, high glycemic, coffee after coffee after coffee, and then we wonder when we're burnt out.
So, for anyone watching that's interested in either making their way into your clinic in Ennis or getting in contact with you, what's the best way for them to reach out and obviously you're busy and you're up the walls, but is there a preferred way of getting in touch with you?
Well, I suppose the best way is just using calling us at the clinic at our number, or sending us an email, and we'll take it from there. Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to say what the number is, or give us the email link?
Yeah, it's
Feel free to plug yourself there.
yeah, I actually need to look at it, because we have a new number, so I just want to make sure we switched from a landline to mobile, just so we could use the extra apps and things like that.
Yeah.
So our reception number here in Ireland is 085 853 2783.
Cool.
Yeah. And if you're emailing, you can email at support@fnclinic.ie.
That's F for Freddy, N for Norma, or F for functional and N for naturopathic.
Yeah, clinic.ie. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks so much. Now we're going to go into a quick yes or no round, and then we'll maybe branch into a couple of other things. Have you ever written a book?
No.
Have you ever driven a Ferrari?
No.
Have you ever jumped out of a plane?
Not yet.
Rode a horse?
Yes.
Have you ever cheated death or escaped death?
Yes.
Have you children?
Yes.
Have you been abroad? Is a bit kind of daft considering you're from Canada and living in Ireland. So
yes,
other than that, yeah. Have you ever eaten an insect?
Yes.
Have you ever walked on hot coals?
No.
Have you ever done public speaking?
Yes.
And have you ever been abducted by an alien?
Not that I know of.
But if you've been on a night out in Ennis, you might have been and just not remembered it, is it?
Yeah.
Huh? So what was your best holiday?
Oh, my best holiday.
Yeah.
Best holiday. That's a good one. Probably I'd say I'd have to go back, going back a few years, probably to Mexico. I've been to Mexico a couple different times, and I've always enjoyed the energy in Mexico. I like the kind of the whole Spanish fiery flair. There's definitely a big interest to me in that. And now that I'm in Ireland, ironically, I kind of have a little bit of draw towards Spain. So there must be something with that whole Spanish fire kind of thing. But yeah, Mexico is a lovely place. I know a lot of people that go there and they say the same thing. I almost moved down there. It was very, very close. Yeah.
Any particular part of Mexico?
Yeah, I was in the Puerto Vallarta area there. There was a new section there called Nuevo Vallarta along the coast there. Very, very lovely, nice area. Yeah, very lovely.
If you're planning a trip to Spain, maybe have a word with my good friend Antonio, who's also in the MenScape group and who lives near Jaén in the south of Spain, near Andalusia. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, it's lovely. I've holidayed in that area as well. It's a real lovely area. Yeah, we'll see. There's a possibility I could end up in Spain in a couple years' time. I had a verbal offer for a clinic down there. Whether it transpires or not, we'll find out. But we'll see.
So the FN clinic might start to develop into an empire, and we'll have maybe more clinics opening up around Europe.
Oh well. We'll see. These days,
Who knows?
We'll play that by ear.
What's your favorite song and why?
Favorite song?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. Favorite song? There's so many favorite songs. If you saw my favorite song list, it's quite extensive.
I'll try and narrow it down to one or two, or I might let you have three.
Well, maybe I'll go towards a certain type of artist. I'm kind of drawn more towards Lenny Kravitz. I like his songs. He writes most of his own songs. I like the meaning of his songs. He's very much of a kind of an energetic, wholesome kind of guy as well. So yeah.
He was big in the 90s, was it? Was it the 90s or the noughties? He had this kind of funky, kind of raunchy, kind of rock sounds.
Yeah. He's got a pretty cool group. He's got, as far as I know, he's got this a really lovely farm in Brazil. I think you can look at it online. His place is astounding. It's really quite nice. But yeah, I'd be drawn to that kind of style music. My music taste is quite wide. I can get into classical, but I can get into the classic rock and roll as well. So I have a wide appreciation for music. I really do. Yeah.
What's your favorite Joe Rogan podcast?
There are many that I still have on the list to watch. Yeah, geez, how many good ones? I think there's one that I really liked. It's probably pertaining to diet that we talked about. There was one with a doctor called Dr. Paul Saladino. Dr. Paul Saladino is a big advocate of a carnivore type diet. He's written a book about the carnivore code. Probably for a vegan, it would seem like a nightmare if they watched that episode. But I liked it because there was a lot of interesting information. He backed a lot of his stuff up with valid research, and I think we need to look at all sides of the story and get a lot of different info in there. But yeah, that was a good one for me. Yeah.
Very good, very good. What's the best book you've ever read, and why? And again, if you can't narrow it down to one, feel free to go with two or three.
Yeah, there's two books that keep coming up, and they're written by the same author, which is David Icke. And it's more of his earlier type books. Some people might say a lot of his books are kind of in the conspiracy area, but he has two books at the beginning. One is called I Am Me, I Am Free.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good book. It's not a long one. And he has another one called Heal the World. And I really like those books. They're plain and simple. They give you an awful lot to think about. And I think on kind of human and world transformation, I think they're very, very good books to look at. Yeah.
His story is a fascinating one. I've been following him for, I'd say, 2007, 2008. Yeah, about 15 years. And I've read one or two of his books, and I've watched a few of his online lectures, and I'd recommend them to anyone. I was only chatting to Paddy on the MenScape there last Wednesday and mentioned to him, like, this guy's produced in the region of published 50 books or so by now, and is an unbelievably prolific writer. And the number of footnotes and the amount of research done is phenomenal. And whatever you think of him, personally, I always quite liked him because I grew up since I was knee-high to a grasshopper in Manchester, eat, sleep and drink football. I was footy mad. Football was my game. And he was a goalkeeper, I think, and had to retire because he got arthritis in his hands. But he went into politics and he went into broadcasting and journalism, and then suffered a huge public humiliation after his first ayahuasca experience. And he talks very candidly. And I don't really get when people, they buy into the huge amount of discrediting of this guy and defamation of his character. And it seems to me he's coming from the right space and coming from the right place. But if he's true, how comes they haven't bumped him off yet?
Well, yeah,
he's woken a lot of people up to the world of conspiracy and understanding that things are not as they may seem, whether it's the moon landings, whether it's JFK, the assassination, whether it's a lot of things that have happened in history where there's an alternative version and a sequence of events that's not been made public or not shared with us. And he goes to great lengths. I saw one that he did about the hollow moon. And he said, lads, this is not my theory. There was scientists in Russia in the 60s that could hear the sound of rocks hitting the moon and it reverberating like a bell. This is nothing original. And yet he's discredited for saying the moon's hollow.
Yeah, you know, it's what is the truth these days? That's the thing. You know, when you look at history, you know, that there's that saying, history is written by the victors. You know, and I like to break the word history apart. History, his story. So whose story is it really? You know, and do we actually know what the truth is?
I like that.
His story. Just because somebody said this is how it is, do we really know, you know, how that is, you know?
Were you there?
Yeah, and, you know, with the moon, you can argue, I've heard so many different theories that we were on the moon, we weren't on the moon is a hollow thing, the moon is like the Death Star, the moon might not even be a solid object, it might be a luminous object, so, but do we really know, you know?
And I suppose that that quest for knowledge, or that unquenchable thirst for knowledge, again, ever since I was a child, I identify with someone like David Icke as having that same desire to either find the truth, discover the truth, uncover the truth, recover the truth. This pursuit of the truth is almost, would you say, an obsession? Not necessarily an obsession, but it defines your character and who you are. You know, the truth as an energetic vibration. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, David, it's interesting because for around the 30 years since David Icke has gone kind of public and written books and the likes, if you read his books, he's kind of prophetic in a way because he's never really been wrong about anything. Everything that he said would come has always come into play, which I find very interesting. Of course, when he started talking about lizard people, a lot of people started discrediting him. That's a whole different other area to get into. But as a whole, when you look at his research, he does put a phenomenal amount of research in, like you said. Some of his lectures, they go on for 8 to 10 hours. You know, he's kind of like a machine when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But you know, you said, why haven't they knocked him off yet, Phil? If
Tongue
they
in
don't
cheek,
do that,
of course.
then they try to make you look like you're crazy, right? So who knows? But I think his track record speaks. You know, I think he's very well spoken. I think he presents things in a very good way that makes sense. Makes sense to me, anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed on that.
And he's gone from such a small following, from hundreds of people now to literally millions and millions of people around the world. So he's definitely has made an impact.
There's always going to be people saying, nah, don't like him. Their gut instincts or their intuitions telling them that this guy, there's something not right with him. And that's fine. That, you know, it's okay for people to have differing opinions. That hopefully is what constitutes free speech and freedom of thought and freedom of opinions. And that's what we're here to explore. But at the same time, I would have watched videos there even just last year when he was doing the London Real interviews with your man Rose, and for 2.5 to 3 hours we were fascinated to watch what he was saying about the media programming, the narrative that comes out, and how you've got all these possibly disparate strands that once you join the dots, they're all interconnected into a web. So whether it's, you know, an event that happens like a landslide in China or in the Far East, or whether it's a political event, an election in Venezuela, or whether it's, something that's happened in South Africa, these things are seemingly disparate and unconnected. But the more knowledge you have, and the more you join the dots, and the more you realize that there are certain organizations and people behind these things happening, and you narrow it down to a very small number of either families or organizations that in fact seem to be a hidden hand behind practically everything that happens in this 3D world that we call reality. You know, I just want to make the noise of something so you can, yeah, it's real, or, you know, it's like, but hang on, if everything that we think is real is constituted of 99.9% space, what is real? Who knows what is real? And David Icke questions everything, and he says, look, you know, how can you know what's real? And that appeals to me, you know?
Yeah, well, everything is frequencies and vibrations, and so people can literally vibrate at different levels. Their realities can be different. If you're vibrating at a really low level or a high level, you have a different way of perceiving things, but also of attracting things to you. There are some people that they're just constant complaining and negative people. They're the constant pessimist, and their life seems to be full of that all the time. Where you've got the optimists, they're keeping their vibes high, they're taking care of themselves, and everything seems to work well in their life. Not that problems never arise, but when it comes, they just kind of glide through it. Where other people, they go, oh, it's happened to me again, and I'm cursed, or this or that, or the world is bad, bad, bad. Well, depends how you look at it, you know?
So would you find, in amongst advising people with regards to health and nutrition, you may be pointing them in the right direction with regards to mindset as well?
Well, it's definitely a part of it. We have to realize that we exist on many different levels. It's just not on a physical level. You know, I'm currently completing my doctorate right now in integrative medicine, where we're using looking at all different types of medicines around the world, integrating it. And yeah, they talk about the 5 bodies of consciousness outside of your physical body. You have different bodies, you know, everything, your emotional, your psychological, your spiritual, you know, they have all the different phrases, the super conscious, super mental, all those kind of things. And, you know, we in the Western world, we look at things physically going outwards, where it's actually the other way around. It goes outwards, inwards. So when you have a problem in the outer bodies, they manifest themselves physically. So when you're working with somebody, it's not just looking, well, okay, what are you eating and so forth. It's what are you thinking? What are you putting in your mind? What are you subjecting to yourself to? Who are the people you hang around with? What are you listening to? You know, are you listening to classical music? Are you listening to death metal every day? You know, all those things, they have an influence on us, and we're constantly being programmed. And that's what we have to look at. And I always tell people, why do you think they call it a TV program or a radio program? Because it's programming. We're constantly being programmed every day. So we have to watch what we allow inside our space. And that has a direct effect on us. And now in these days where the media is constantly woe is me and fear mongering and all this stuff going on, you know, it's, instead of growing together, we're growing more and more apart, and nothing will come into balance unless we get back together again as a whole.
Yeah, what we consume is incredibly important, whether it's what we eat or read or digest mentally, physically, emotionally. And even just going back to the UK, when I popped back home, not been for a while now due to travel restrictions, but I'd literally be in the car between the airport and going back home, and I'd already heard on the radio about 50 times the word Ebola or the word cancer. And it's like, I don't know if people in England suffer from a lot of cancer or Ebola, but I wouldn't be surprised, because every second word out of the mouths on the broadcasting was all this fear porn to do with cancer and Ebola. And I'm like, turn that off. And they're like, what's wrong with you? You're crazy. And I'm like, no, I don't want to listen to ads on the radio or watch ads on the they don't have the right to bombard me with this bullshit 24/7. I don't consent to it. And I don't know if I'm in the minority, but they kind of regard me with suspicion, as if I'm crazy, because I'm just watching what I consume, you know? Anyway, before we digress way too far, any other books that you'd recommend other than the David Icke ones?
Oh,
to come back
Yeah,
to the books. Yeah.
yeah, well, you know me, I love my books. I have quite an extensive library. Now, self-admittedly, a lot of my books are regarding to the work that I do. But oh, if there was another one, I say off the hand, I do like a lot of the writings from Dr. Wayne Dyer as well. I think he has a lot of great advice. I actually prefer listening to his audios because he's got this really friendly kind of grandfather type voice, and I like listening to him. But
Yeah, cool.
I think a lot of his books, and I think he's written something like 30 books as well.
Yeah.
A lot of great sound, wholesome, high vibrational information there. Yeah.
And I would echo that. There's maybe a half a dozen books that I've read that have changed my life. And one was given to me by a Taiwanese nun who I'm friends with from the Buddhist center in East Clare, of which I'm a community member. And Sister Gino presented me with a book called The Power of Intention by Dr. Wayne Dyer, and some incredible wisdom in there, and definitely a life-changing thing. I think I had it for about 12 months before I opened it. I was treasuring it before I'd even read any of it. Where he spoke at volumes about certain things similar to the Four Agreements, where you can practice, there's practical wisdom, or there's practical guidelines that you can follow in your life, and if they don't improve your situation, then fine, don't follow them. You know?
There's now that we're talking about it, there's two books in particular that come to mind. One is I believe it's called Stop the Excuses, something to do with excuses. I think it's Stop the Excuses, and it's really good because when you read that, you really realize that we're making excuses all the time. You know, we
to ourselves and to others.
We self-sabotage ourselves. We make excuses instead of really coming to the truth of the matter, which would initiate a positive change. Then the other book, there's a spiritual solution for every problem. And that goes back to what we were saying before about the different bodies of consciousness, about going outwards, inwards. And he relates every problem that you have is a spiritual problem. And if you address that, then it just goes away. And again, it's about the frequencies and vibrations which you hold and what you attract into your life.
Do you work with people on their chakras or their energy centers in the context of nutrition and wellness?
Yeah, we do work with that in terms of
bioenergy, should I say?
Yeah, nutrition, wellness, doing hands-on treatments, and also I'm involved in a lot of kind of modern technologies as well. So some people might call it bio or body hacking. So again, going on the premises that everything is frequencies and vibrations, there are a lot of interesting therapies that work with those. It's almost kind of, we're getting into the age now where all those things that we used to see on Star Trek are really becoming a reality. You know, the tricorder.
They were like documentaries, weren't they?
Yeah.
You know?
So yeah. Well, the interesting thing about Star Trek is that they hire actual physicists and the likes for the show. So everything that you see on those shows, in theory, is a possibility. When I read I think there's a book called The Physics of Star Trek. It's very interesting because they go through all the different technologies and they see, well, what is the theory in there and how could it become possible? And it really comes down to energy. If you have enough energy or know how to magnify energy, you can do almost anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the very special things about a human rebirth, a human incarnation, is the power to manifest your own reality. And although many of us may have not been encouraged to become aware of this in our childhood, maybe in our childhood we were taught to suppress our power or believe in how powerful we are, so that we became meek or downtrodden or humble. Nothing wrong with being humble, of course, but when you step into your personal power and your ability to manifest the reality that your heart's desire, and understand that that's maybe through your divine connection and your ability to create things in a physical realm, if you have them first in the in the thought form or in the metaphysical realm, there's huge amounts of research. Was it Nikola Tesla said that when scientists start to discover non-physical phenomena, they'll make more progress than they have done for decades with just studying physical phenomena. And so I think we're beginning to enter into a period of time where that's going to become more commonplace, and people are going to embrace more of those things. And, you know, change is hard for some. There's lots of people don't like change, or they're resistant to change, or we all are in some ways for some things. I've been putting off calling the dentist for the last few weeks, but I regard myself as fairly progressive and open-minded. But who wants to go to the dentist and have a wisdom tooth extracted? Come on, it's like, but I know it's for my benefit ultimately, because then the pain will go, you know. So I can't exactly preach about you know, resistance to change for being afraid of that call. But you know, I think the times that we're in, and quantum physics and the reality that something can be, a particle can be a wave or a particle, based on whether it's been observed by an observer. I think some of the ramifications of quantum physics are such. Was it Niels Bohr, the Danish physicist, said, if you've read about quantum physics and you're not shocked, you've not understood it properly. Because it's profoundly shocking that, you know, again, we can knock something. You think that what's physical is real, and it's 99.9% space. Like, how can that even be? You know,
all like we said, it's everything is frequencies and vibrations. Everything resonates at different levels, whether it's you, me, the planet, the universe, the chair that you're sitting on. And these frequencies and vibrations in our present day right now, they're becoming higher and higher. And some people that are still stuck in old programming, it's very difficult for them if they're not making the jump with that, and they can seem like they're going crazy. And there's so many people that are stressed out now, or they seem like they're losing their mind, so to say, because they're still holding on to those old heavy vibrations, which are pulling them down. So we're entering an era now where the frequencies and vibrations are getting higher and faster. And this is why time seems to be going so fast. And everybody's saying it now. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're young or old, time is flying. That's the phrase that we use. Yeah. And time is just a man-made construct. We don't actually even understand time. I was talking to a quantum physicist once, and we discussed that. And he says, yeah, well, it is getting faster, and they have various equipment to measure frequencies and vibrations. And he says everything is getting quicker and faster. And what we would deem as a 24-hour day right now, he said it's the equivalent of a 16-hour day. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because I'm by far not a lazy individual, but I can't seem to get the same stuff done that I used to. It just seems to be going faster and faster and faster. And people seem to be trying to add more and more on, when I think we need to be lightening our load a little bit, and tuning in and grounding ourselves and paying attention to what's most important. So in this day and age in the world, we think that everything's gone haywire. I don't think it's gone haywire or more evil. I think it's always been the way it is. I think just things are coming more to light, because with the frequencies, the veil is being lifted, right? Sorry?
The veil is being lifted.
The veil is being lifted. There's more light shining on things. So now the creatures of the night are being exposed. It was always there. Now we're just seeing it. Yeah. And I think we're at a very interesting point in our lives, in our time. I always believed I was born into a special time, and I still believe that. And I think we are going to see a transformation of some point coming up soon. I think it's coming to a head now, and the bubble is going to burst soon. Which way? It depends on the masses of people. If we get our consciousness on the same level, we can change things, like the Bible says, in the twinkling of an eye. That's how quick it can happen. Yeah. And you can see how the world operates right now, because whatever powers that be, they want to keep us separated, because there's a danger in getting together. And so all this COVID stuff with the social distancing and stay away and wear the mask, it all keeps people separated. And now they're fighting each other because you believe in vaccines and you don't, and you believe in masks and you don't. So we're getting paranoid of each other, and then all the race and the gender stuff, and that all comes into it. And we need to be getting together more. And like John Lennon, power to the people, right? And isn't it ironic when you talk about John Lennon that when he got assassinated, what was the last album that he wrote there? It was Power to the People.
Uh-huh.
So there are certain individuals, when they have too much of a pull on changing people, they seem to have accidents.
Same thing happened to Jimi Hendrix, who said, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, we'll know peace. Yeah. And they took him out and bumped him off as well and made out it was some kind of drug overdose and he choked on his own vomit. But the people around him, they didn't think he was crazy enough to suicide himself or overdose. And unfortunately, we do see through the history records people that have spoken with great heart about unity, and as a means or an antidote to this sort of division mentality and divide and conquer mentality, they've accidents happen to them, and so I think it would lead you to perhaps be cynical, but there's always a happy story or a happy ending if you want there to be one, And if you want there to be doom and gloom, well, by God, you'll find that as well.
That's for sure.
I am just conscious of the time now, and I feel like we could go on and on for another hour or two. I'd love to chat to you more, but we're practically done. We've got about 5 minutes or so to go.
No worries.
I was going to touch upon current affairs briefly before going into a 1-minute quickfire round and ask you that the Canadian truckers has been in the news a lot recently, and being from sort of Canada, I thought you might have some insight into that. Personally, I see that there's a lot of these sort of puppets or people in positions where they've been engineered to be so. And your man in there is just another one of the same type, groomed by these globalists in order to suppress. And I've not seen anything to change my mind on that. But what do you make of what's going on with the truckers in Canada?
Well, it's interesting because you actually don't hear a lot about it in the mainstream media. Not that I really listen to the mainstream media, but when I talk to my mother back in Canada, it's like, oh, these truckers, they're bad people, and because this is what they're telling people in the media, and they're robbing people and they're pooping on their lawns and stuff like that. And then I have friends there, they're going, yeah, that's not happening, and they show me videos and everything that's going on, and you're like, that's not how it is. But it's gone so bad, the situation there, that it's actually nice to see that a great group of people have gotten together, and they're making the only way, because nobody is hearing them and nobody is televising anything. They've had to make a statement, and it definitely made a statement. And a lot of people have supported them. A lot of people have supported them with food and supplies. Unfortunately, we know that those that have tried to financially support them, they've taken measures to seize these people's bank accounts and that, which that's hugely scary territory getting into that.
That's crossing a line in the sand for sure. If any Canadians were under the illusion that they were in a parliamentary democracy where you elect politicians who then make decisions based on the best interests of their candidates, you can't maintain that belief and at the same time accept that people have had their bank accounts frozen on the whim of a particular person who's awarded themselves emergency powers for what, let's face it, wasn't really an emergency. It was a peaceful protest from the footage I saw. So this is a kind of a crossing of the line in the sand for
definitely. I mean, the government even gave the banks the authority to freeze anybody's account without their permission. They could just, anybody they suspect, they could just freeze their account, So the the one old lady that donated 20 Canadian dollars to help the truckers to feed themselves or whatever, they can freeze her account now. You know, and the truckers, they have been quite compliant with the law enforcement there. So when they were asked to clear the ways from the borders, they did that. They weren't impeding anything. The only place where it's plugged up is in Ottawa, along where the government buildings are there, because they're trying to make their point there. But I think it's woken up a lot of other countries around the world that are now doing very similar type trucker revolutions, if you want to call that. I think right now there's quite a huge one in the United States, in Washington, and ironically, there's not a buzz about it on the news. It's huge, and it's going on for I don't know how many miles now, but it's quite big. But it seems everybody's looking at the Russia-Ukraine thing right now, distracting people from that. Whether that's done on purpose or not, well, we can argue about that for the next little while.
Yeah, when you see the way the mainstream media operates as purely a tool in the hands of those who would seek to have a particular, or what they used to call spin or a line, and it's amazing how many people seem to buy into it or fall for it. It's quite shocking, really, that people don't seem to have developed the faculty of critical thinking and question how come somebody just flicked a switch, turned off COVID, and all of a sudden turned on Ukraine, and all of a sudden nobody's, where's COVID gone? What's all this about? Yeah. You know, did it have anything to do with Pfizer releasing 75 pages of documents on side effects, including death, one might add? All those crazy conspiracy theorists that told you 2 years ago not to go anywhere near experimental injections for fear of not knowing what was actually in them or what the consequences were. And you're talking about the veil lifting, and you're talking about sci-fi programs like Star Trek and mRNA technology and spike proteins and transhumanist agenda. And it's like, whoa, holy mackerel, where's this all going? Is this for real?
Yeah, well, yeah, people are literally being programmed, like we said earlier. And, you know, I always say you need to question everything. Even when I do talks and lectures, yes, listen to what I'm saying, but still research it, you know, question it. That's the only way you're really going to know something. You need to dig in and look at things. And, you know, it's unfortunate that in this day and time, and I don't mean to sound too critical here, but majority of people are really lazy and ignorant. They don't have the attention span to really look into something. And this is what you see in the media. You see all these short little headlines and spurts of information that aren't really much more than 10 to 20 seconds. And then when you go to have an intellectual talk or debate about somebody, you can't even have that because they only know those short little blurbs which they're given. And you start going into the science or digging into something, and there's nothing there. You can finish their lines for them because it's the same old BS that you keep hearing continually all the time.
So for those that would rather not regurgitate sound bites, for those that would rather watch what they consume and investigate the truth, like there's something hugely suspicious about the demonization of Russia. I mean, for a country that has such a rich and vast history, if you ever came across the writings of Dostoevsky or Tolstoy or the stories of the Napoleonic era, everything is practically so diluted when it's translated into English because the Russian language is so rich in its origin and the text. And, you know, some of the amazing crystals we've brought in, like the shungite from Russia, is amazingly well presented and packaged. And, you know, I'm finding it quite at odds with any kind of common sense or critical thinking to see this playing out of the demonization of Russia, who, I'm not going to get into geopolitics, but there's a lot worse has happened in places like Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Egypt, Palestine, and there hasn't been such a huge public outcry, nothing against the people of the Ukraine whatsoever, you know. I expect we want peace everywhere, not just in the Ukraine, right? But the outrage is strictly limited to this particular region based on the mass media programming. And so why are so few people only able to see it? Was there a guy that coined the phrase mass hypnosis or something?
Yeah. Well,
that was another true. Joe Rogan podcast. That was Dr. Robert Malone, right?
Yeah, Malone. Yeah. It's, you know, these days it's hard to know who they're all players in a game, you know, and they're all playing their part to progress certain agendas. And sometimes we find that hard to believe. But one thing is, if you do a lot of research and you follow money, that will tell you an awful lot. Follow the money, who's profiting, who has investments in and this, that, and the other, and you'll get your story pretty quickly on what's what. And when you want to bring something in, when you want to bring in a new agenda, and taking a phrase from David Icke, you know, there's a problem, reaction, solution. And the powers that be that are running the world, they've known this for hundreds, arguably, if not thousands of years, and they keep playing that. You know, they create the problem, they know exactly what the reaction is of the public is, and then they go, well, here's your solution. And the solution is always geared towards what they want, where you want you to go anyways, right?
I'm only going to say on this, because we could go into this for hours. Did you ever see the interview with Aaron Russo?
No, I haven't. No.
He was filmed, I think, back in 2010, 11, 12. He knew he was ill. He was terminally ill. He was going to die. And he did an interview with Alex Jones, the guy that was, again, discredited for being a bit crazy. Because he did kind of talk in a kind of a very animated kind of way that you would think he was a bit crazy.
He can seem a bit crazy at times, yes.
Yeah, but he spoke very candidly about the agenda is microchipping. There's a depopulation agenda, and they want to microchip the remaining survivors. And if you don't believe me, fair enough, but go and research this stuff for yourself. And he shared information pertaining to this that you could go and research it. And it's like all these, what they call quangos or NGOs that people had never heard of before, the PNAC or what were the other ones, the Trilateral Commission, and all these kind of non-governmental organizations, bodies where there were people unelected, and like you say, follow the money back to who's the shareholders, the stock, and this whole kind of scenario unfolded or was unveiled, and you'd be literally shocked, because you'd think that if you're a decent person, you know, and you're coming from a decent place and you want to work hard and you want to play hard and raise a family and be a good guy, you wouldn't be too far wrong in thinking that everybody else is like that, right? But unfortunately, no, not everybody else is like that. Another book or audio book you might have come across, The Psychopath Test by John Ronson, where he talks about a percentage of the population that they either had their empathy genetically removed, or they're just curious about things that would normally sicken and revulse most people. Would look away, you know, if there was a scene or something. And maybe it's a percentage of the human race that's a different blood type, or maybe there is some extraterrestrial involvement if we take the David Icke stuff to the next level with the shape-shifting reptilians, right? I mean, you know, how crazy does it have to get before we see really what's going on in the full picture? The 1 minute quickfire round.
All right, let's do it.
Aldi or Lidl?
Lidl.
Pizza or Chinese?
I don't really eat either, but authentic Chinese we'll go with. Let's add that word in.
Blonde or brunette?
That's dangerous territory. Skip.
I could have been talking about beers.
Okay,
Manchester or Liverpool?
Don't care.
Hurling or rugby?
That's an even for me, Ty. Yeah.
Day or night?
Day.
Brown or pink?
Uh,
I have to keep a straight face when I'm asking that one.
let's go with pink.
Spots or stripes?
Stripes.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Kerry or Dublin?
Kerry.
England or Germany?
Germany.
Scotland or Wales?
Scotland.
Mother Teresa or Gandhi?
Gandhi.
Buddhism or Catholicism?
Buddhism.
Gardening or the gym?
I like both. I want to say gardening, but right now I'm probably more gym. 'Cause that's, maybe in another few years, gardening will be my answer. Yeah.
Or if you do it right, exercise in the garden, you get both, right?
That's it. That's it.
You probably answered this one already. Boccherini or Echo and the Bunnymen?
Don't know enough about it to make a decision.
House or techno?
House.
TV or radio?
Radio.
Spain or France? We've answered
Spain.
that one.
Yeah.
Humans or plants? This is the quick fire round now, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know what in context we're getting at with that one. So
exactly. That's the whole idea. Just fire it straight back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Red or blue?
Blue.
Yellow or green?
Yellow.
Philosophy or psychology?
Philosophy.
Brazil or Argentina?
Argentina.
Onions or carrots?
Onions.
Seaweed or cabbage?
Seaweed.
Friday or Sunday?
Sunday.
Roses or tulips?
Roses.
Fire or water?
Fire.
Earth or air?
Earth.
Sun or moon?
Sun.
Emerald or ruby?
Emerald.
Silver or gold?
Silver.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Meat or cheese?
Meat.
And finally, beach or forest?
Ooh.
It's always a tough one, that.
That is a tough one. Give a slight edge to forest.
Very good. Richard Rocker, thanks for being a guest on MenScape, the podcast, and thanks for an insight into who you are and what you do. Will you give a reminder to anyone watching how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in getting some advice on nutrition or visiting the Functional Naturopathic Clinic?
Yeah. Thanks, Carl. Thanks for having me. Yeah. Functional Naturopathic Clinic is the name of my clinic. We're in Ennis, County Clare, Ireland. I do consultations with people outside. I work with many patients in different countries. The wonder of video technology. But you can contact, like I said, on the reception number, which let me get it again here, is 085-853-2783. You can email us at support@fnclinic.ie. And that's the best ways to get a hold of us.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Richard. And we look forward to hearing from you again soon. And thanks very much for your time this evening. I hope you will have a relaxing evening. And I hope you will be well and look forward to catching up with you soon. Thanks so much.
All
God
the best,
bless.
Carl. Thank you very much.
MenScape, the podcast with Carl.J. Ashley.